So today we're going to learn how to draw a landscape. Some of the things that we're going to be using are just the number 2 pencil, eraser, a blending stump, a pink eraser, and one piece of compressed charcoal. The reference photo we'll be using is this one. I chose this one because it has different layers to it. Start off with the background back here where the hill is. That's one layer. And then you start seeing that the trees start coming from it. You see these small trees that are lined up way back here that separates that hillside with the rest of the landscape. It's the furthest back in the background. And you can see where the stream, it goes around this corner right here. It's kind of like a bend right here. And so when we begin our drawing, we're going to start with this part right here, the furthest back. We're going to start with it, and then we're going to have these small trees that we're going to draw. And then we're going to work our way around to create the shape of the creek on both sides, here and here. And then we're going to form the foliage, the mid-ground, and it keeps bringing it forward towards you to give that illusion of depth. Let's begin. So I first start with just a little small pencil sketch. I'm mapping everything out, kind of working it out in my brain as I'm going along. All of this is kind of light. It's not real dark. I don't try to put in a whole lot of detail in it right now. It's the scrub and brush around on the bank. It's always going to be different. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I start trying to get an idea of it, and the hillside in the background. This is a little creek called Billy Creek, and family used to vacation down there quite a lot when the kids were little. It's one of my favorite spots to be at. It's in southeastern Oklahoma. As you can see, we can start working on the trees in the furthest back, and all I'm doing is placing the tree trunks and trying to show where they might be, scratching it out with my number 2 pencil. Later on, you'll see where this comes in handy. When I start working with the compressed charcoal and start working it in, the number 2 pencil will kind of serve as a little scratch board behind it, and you'll still see those little trunks. So this is where I start with the compressed charcoal. I start just laying it in right over the top of where I've drawn already. Start getting those dark areas, and then I'll come back and use a little blending stump and start outlining where the hillside is. And this is the furthest point in the back, and you notice how dark it is right now. But right now I'm trying to map it out and kind of see where I'm going with it. And so I'm starting to work on some of the foliage again, and I'll go back and forth with it. Notice how I'm leaving some of the light above where the hillside is. You can kind of see it kind of shows through. When you're out in the woods, that effect kind of comes through there too. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get. And then I'll also start working with this blending stump on some of the water. Notice how I'm going from left to right instead of up and down when I'm working with the water and on the ground. When I'm working with the foliage and the tree trunks, I'm going in a different direction. But on the water, I start pushing the shaded area closer to the middle. And now I start using an eraser into the background and kind of lightening it up. We want to it pushes it back into the background a little bit. Work it in slowly, get that light area. We want to push it back a little bit further back, start defining that hillside. And you notice that up above the hillside, you see that I still have some of those trees left over from the number 2 pencil. I'll start getting rid of those now. Kind of creates more light in the background. Once I have that erased, then I'll come back and I'll use the number 2 pencil to define those treetops just a little bit more. See, I'll start pushing it up there just a little bit above that hillside now with the number 2 pencil. We don't want it too dark. We want it just right. And now I'll start defining some more of the tree trunks in the midground. And then back to the background. See how I'm kind of working it from one side to the other, forward and back. It's an adjustment, trying to see if I can get the light just right. And now I'm starting to push around the bend. I'm pushing that dark around it. And then I'll start working in front of it and bringing more trunks and foliage onto the one side and then onto the other side. See how I'm working from both sides? That way it kind of keeps everything kind of even. Then I'll use the blending stump and kind of edge out some more of the foliage and define it, the shapes a little bit more. I'll bring some of the darker areas in here and there, and I'm still working into the shadows. And then I'll start pushing that darker area into the water. I bring it closer to where the light is, but not all the way into the light. And the darker that you go with your shading, it'll bring the light out even more. It'll make it shine. I mean, that's where that light comes from. It's, you know, that it gives it that sharp contrast, and it makes it look so much brighter. And so right now I'm trying to work in some more of the shadow effects and the lighting, and some from the foliage kind of brings it down into the water, the reflection that you see. And I'll work in, you know, the foreground a little bit. And then I keep pushing. I use my fingers to bring some of that charcoal down into it to create that reflection. And I'm still concerned with just the darkest darks right now. I'm getting it all, it's like just trying to find the shapes of it. And I keep working into the water. And the reason why I'm using just my finger right now and just trying to push it is that it gives it that little, the paper itself has like a texture to it, so it kind of grazes over it. I don't put too much pressure on it, kind of a lighting effect. And so now I'll come back with my pink eraser and I'll start defining some more of the lighter areas with the foliage and some more of the tree trunks with it. And the paper off to the side, you'll notice I go back and forth, and I take and I clean my pink eraser off, so I'll have a sharp, clean edge every time I go back into it. Now I'll start using a finer eraser. These are just regular erasers that you can buy anywhere. And I'll go back and I'll clean it and I'll clean it. And then I'll go back and forth, back and forth. Now I'm defining some more of the lighted areas. I go from the real dark and I bring it into the light. And I'm starting to work more into the foreground and the reflections into the water. This is where it really starts to stand out. You can start seeing the landscape itself. It doesn't look exactly like the photo, but that photo is just like a reference. It's not something for you just to copy completely, unless you really want to, I guess. But for me, it just gives me something to go by. It gives me an idea. And so I start adding the more finer details with the compressed charcoal, and I'll come back and I'll work a little bit of the details in it just to kind of give it more of a photo look, to kind of give it to better, I mean, makes it look more real. And I'll work it in. There we go. Hope you liked it.